Hello. Today we would be talking about a very important and very interesting topic that is avant-garde. Avant-garde is a part of modernist movement, and avant-garde expanded itself to be a modernist movement. An argument can be made in such way. And it is quite brilliant to talk about. I'm very happy to talk about this because the way we perceive things now is very seriously influenced by avant-garde movement. Avant-garde, however people pronounce it, is actually a French word. What that French word means is that in an army, there are different ranks, and there is always something called as avant-garde in French army, where these are the people who stand in the forefront, and they would go first into the war, and they explore the entire war field and so on. So of course, there is nothing romantic about avant-garde because they are the first people to die. However, in art, it is it is not so horrible. Avant-garde means that trying out new things. Looking out for be the first one in an avenue. So avant-garde is a movement where things were drastically changing, and so there were new inventions in the field of arts, new innovations in the field of art, as in new forms evolved, and we are going to speak about those forms. There are some of the forms we are going to discuss, and a little bit about how these forms influence literature. And let's understand one thing. Avant-garde was initially an art form, and so they rapidly started as an art movement, and of course, the similar things can be noticed in literature. So I mean, not everything. For example, art movement involved something like, impressionism, right? So, but impressionism is not so much seen in literary movement. However, things like surrealism, magic realism is always seen in, it is always, found in, literature. So, I mean, we try to make some connections, when we are talking about the key avant-garde movements. Avant-garde is not a single movement. Let's make that clear. So it's a series of movements in art which led to, a sudden change, a transition, we can say. So take example of paintings, to Renaissance painting, 1600s or 1500s. From there to romantic paintings, there is no much difference. Like, there are some conceptual changes which you can notice, but there isn't much difference over there. Despite 400 years of transition, there isn't much change. But when it comes to 19th century painting to a 20th century painting, like if you look at what we usually call as modern art, so you clearly notice that it is not the same as the traditional art forms. So there is a drastic change, and so the word drastic might not even give justice to the kind of transition which took place during the time. uh, but yeah, I mean, so it is even drastic change requires a lot of preparation in the background, and that preparation was there for art, and the same could be found in literature as well. And let us try to understand some of the key movements of avant-garde. So the first avant-garde form which we can take into consideration is impressionism. So the moment we say impressionism, one name comes to our mind, and that name is Vincent van Gogh. So Vincent van Gogh was, he was originally a Dutch painter. He was from Netherlands, but he settled in Paris, and he painted brilliant paintings with so the paintings of Impressionism. So they believed that you should understand something as a painting. Until then, the painting was supposed to be realistic, right? So there was, I mean, things should look like real. But Impressionism is not like that, so it is, you should clearly understand, it is a painting. So the colors are bright yellow, more yellow than usual, and the colors are not close to the reality, and the brushstrokes are actually visible, and many such things are features of Impressionism. And Claude Monet, the later painter of 20th century, was also part of Impressionism movement, one of the first painter to recognize the mastery of Vincent van Gogh. Later, after his death, of course, during his life, there weren't many who appreciated him. Anyway, so Impressionism is one of the key avant-garde movements, in art. However, we can't really see something similar in literature, because it was purely an art movement. And the painter Vincent van Gogh never understood that he created some revolutionary idea. Anyway, so but yeah, so the Impressionism is one of the earliest avant-garde movement. Then we have Surrealism. Surrealism is, it was, much exploited by Salvador Dali, Spanish painter. So, his paintings are, you can Google it and, find it out. So they are very unreal. So, not just the painting looks unreal, the painting is unreal. Like, well, for example, a ladder which is, completely in a shape of Mobius strip. It's absolutely not possible. But if you paint that, it is surrealism. Things doesn't make sense. So surrealism, quite, it emphasized on irrational, things, things which looks like a dream. So that is, things which looks like a dream is the key word when we are talking about surrealism, because the magic realism, is also there, that we'll talk. So surrealism is, it looks like, something which you can dream of, something which which happens in your subconscious, self. And so this irrational, mode of painting uh, had its impact on literature. So literature adopted it as, abstract writing, and things which happens as a dream analysis kind of a writing. So where you can see, I mean, James Joyce and Virginia Woolf are the two writers who utilized this particular tool. I mean, I mean, when I say they used this particular tool, not in their entirety of the work, but some of the characters which they present, some of the events which where things happen, are largely influenced by surrealism. So that is one of the key movements of avant-garde. Then we have Dadaism. Dadaism is a it was a movement which focused on I mean, which was which focused on anti-war sentiment. So like, so there was World War First, and we know the World War First was, it had a tragic impact on, lot of countries, not just in Europe but other parts of the world. And so the paintings of Dadaism depicted these, these, realities of war, and so how, it is, the painting is, kind of nonsensical. The painting is, not really something. I mean, of course, something which depicts reality, but it voices reality. So the two major ideals of Dadaism was, bourgeoisie. It worked against bourgeoisie. So bourgeoisie is, wealthy system. I mean, it's about the wealthy, like, how, they mismanage things, and all that, and anti-war sentiments. So these are the two things, which you majorly see. I'll give you, for your understanding, I'll give you an idea of a painting, right? So you see four monkeys, sitting on a table. They all wear suit and, monocle and, a top hat, and, smoking a cigar or something. So which depicts, a wealthy population, and they're all playing, cards, and so they are betting. They have chips in front of us, the chips as in casino chips, that they're betting on it, and all that. So it's, whereas, in other part of the painting, so here the monkeys are playing. In other part of, in the same painting, there is a human being working very hard, maybe undressed, so this painting, when I say, it gives us an understanding of, it gives us an impression that, okay, these wealthy people are, so they are just like, monkeys, yeah, getting momentarily pleasure, while there are so many people who are working hard even to earn their clothes, even to work hard to earn their food. So these kind of paintings were painted during the Dadaism. So, the people who follow Dadaist, paintings. I mean, so similar things you can see in writings, but, there weren't an vocal Dadaistic writer. For example, some of these features you can see in George Orwell, so blessed be his name. But George Orwell, but he never claimed himself as a Dadaist writer, or he wasn't a. I mean, he didn't produce a work which mimicked the entirety of Dadaism. Uh, Maybe a little bit Animal Farm, but not completely. But a little bit of influence of Dadaism you can find in George Orwell. Then we have expressionism. Expressionism is, so things are supposed to be overly expressed, right? So these people believed that the problem is emotions are not being expressed, right? So and so they are supposed to be represented in order to in order to come in terms of just to come in terms of reality. So usually they're speaking about negative emotions, right? So for example, so a painting screams of anger, so there's a painting called a scream. So it's a best example for expressionist painting. So where, like, so the I mean, you don't know who that person is. That doesn't even look like a man, it look like a some kind of ghost, but you know what is happening in the painting, and so you feel something when you look at that painting, right? So that is expressionism. And in writings, expressionism was was majorly brought in. I mean, one of the pioneers of expressionism was Franz Kafka. So Franz Kafka, in his writings, so there is a beautiful short story by Franz Kafka, Hunger Artist. So the story name is Hunger Artist. I was privileged enough to read it and teach it to one batch of students. So Hunger Artist, such a beautiful story. So what is the meaning of hunger artist? So artists have their craft, they have their art, and this person's art is being hungry. Starving is the craft of this person. Such a interesting story it was. Of course, it is not reality, so nobody can starve for months together. But this particular story was very much exempl. I mean, it brought in a lot of emotions, and it makes us think of how we look at artists, how we look at art. And these are not objective representation of things, these are emotional representations. And these I mean emotions are important. Let us agree to that. Emotions are important. And Franz Kafka did it, his master of expressionism. So then, another movement in which we can talk of during futurism is futurism. Avant-garde is futurism. Futurism is it focus on what is happening in the society and where we are heading towards. And it majorly focused on how the future would be, what could be the technological advancements, and what could be the nature of things, probably 10 years, 20 years, 100 years in line. So, and so as the title suggests, it's all about depicting future. And it and just because it is about future doesn't mean it is unreal, in the sense, like, so it had a purpose. The purpose is being alerting the present, right? So by just thinking about what would our future be, we can alert the present that, okay, this is something which we shouldn't do. This is something which we should be aware of. Right? For example, today, if the environmental concerns doesn't affect us, right? We are going to do the same mistakes which we are doing for a lot of time. And so that is not really good. So when we think of what could be the future if we continue to uh, be in the same way, so that will be, I mean you know so I mean that will be that will create might create disasters. Who's to say? But we understand that it might create disasters. And projecting a future would give us a understand about the present. And when it comes to writing, two works of you know before pre 1950s come to my mind. That is Time Machine and War of the Worlds, right? So two works. A Time Machine is a novel, and War of the Worlds is a novel. So these two works, which exemplified, futurism. Those spoke about the futures, but they said quite a lot about the present. So that is, another movement. So one more movement is constructivism. Constructivism is, purely focused on, speaking about the social realities and political realities. And, so until then, so the idea was, art has to be looked at as art itself. But, of course, this constructivism had a very strong backing of Marxism. So, of course, this constructivism originated in Russia. So, it had a strong, roots in Marxism. And Marxist belief is that there is no actions which is not economic or political. Every action of us is political action. So, and art, of course, is very political, and they are true. So that is why these painters and writers focused on the focused on projecting social and political realities. And so that could be seen here. And so there are lots and lots of examples which we can present But the best example I can give you is George Orwell. No doubt, was a great writer who wasn't, he didn't claim to be a constructivist writer, but he became a constructivist writer to an extent. Then we have Cubism. Cubism, is a movement which was deliberately invented by Pablo Picasso, a famous painter. And his paintings were, I mean, if you Google the paintings of Pablo Picasso, you'll see. So they're all, they're all like bits and pieces, and so if there is a face, there is three eyes, one here, one there, and so these are cubism paintings, and cubism paintings. Of course, so the idea is of deconstruction, and it had its impact on writing as well. So the writing, influenced by cubism, is not linear. So the story is, so little bit of story is told now, and little bit more, little bit more, little bit more, and it might be like it might be like just so go in terms of timeline. The timeline is not chronological, so a part of it is set in future, part of it is set in past, and so on. So that is a cubism writings, which we can see there. And so these are the major movements which had which we can see in this particular period of time. And some of the things which, I mean, generally speaking, about what are the some of the things which you can speak about avant-garde. So that is very very easy to find out. One is regarding narrative. Narrative is fragmented and non-linear, so that we have spoken in the previous video as well. What is fragmentation, and how story can be non-linear, and so on. Then regarding new forms of writing. So right. So free verse was present, but free verse became, so there is a clear difference between free verse of romanticism, free verse of Victorian writing, and free verse of modern time, modern age. So free verse is earlier, at least there was some uniformity in the line structure. So, but in the modern poetry, so the free verse might mean one word is a line, and another line might have 10 words. So there is no uniformity at all. And their argument is that when the life is not uniform, why should art which represent life should be? So poetry which represent life should be. So free verse was so different than what was present before. So as we have talked about, avant-garde is taking new steps. So this was one of the major steps which was taken in the field of poetry. Then we have stream of consciousness, of course, which was important. Then the language was metaphorical, usage of lot of symbols and imageries. So that was also there. Then some of the ideas, so social, political ideas were involved in writing. Until then, it was not so much, unless almost all works have some influence of socio-political ideas in the modern times. Then urbanization, works focused very much on urbanization. So I mean, that we are going to read later. Just to give you an example, James Joyce Ulysses, I mean, many of the novels are set up in urban settings. And then we also have things like Charles Baudelaire's poetry, or T.S. Eliot's poetry, where the first few lines, they depict the urban setting first, then we get into the characters. So that is another thing. Then the technology, speaking about the technology, and so of course, unknown citizen, we can remember. So these were the major focus of writings in the modern age. Of course, these were influenced by avant-garde movement, and part of avant-garde movement in writing itself. Then then we can just talk little bit about the boundaries, right? So until then, the writing was always, restricted to certain boundaries. Boundaries would be, whether nationality, like, people were talking about, okay, so he's a British writer, he's an Irish writer, he's a French writer, and so on. So it was restricted to nationality. It was restricted to certain, movements. For example, any writers of 18th century, 17th century, you just put them in certain movements, like, okay, so these were romantics, these were metaphysical writers, these were Victorian writers, and so on. But modern writers are not like that. They might have got, some influence from and on, certain movements, but they are not restricted to that movement alone. So George Orwell, so we have spoken about so many things. He would fit into so many of those. He is not restricted to only one of these forms. So that is how things were, like, so the forms were not, they were not restricting themselves to certain ideas, certain forms, certain boundaries. So that is a very important thing, which you can look at during the avant-garde movement. So these are the major ideas regarding avant-garde and its influence on modernist writings. And hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.